Right, so I'd like to welcome everyone to the latest BizSugar Live Webinar. We do these on the second and fourth Wednesdays of every month, and you can see all of the past replays and all of the upcoming events on the BizSugar blog at blog.bizsugar.com/webinars. And there's a tab at the top. You can just click on the tab. And today we're really excited. We're going to be talking about, is your business legally legit? And we have with us a really amazing guest, Laura Cowan, Esquire. She's a CPA and the founder of a law office, Laura Cowan, in New York City. She's an estate planning and small business attorney who helps individuals, families, and entrepreneurs protect what's important. And she has a lot of acclaims. Super Lawyers chose her as a rising star in 2019, 2020, and 2021. And that award is reserved for the top 2.5% of lawyers in New York. The New York Times named her a top woman lawyer in New York in the 2020 issue in March. And Yelp ranked her the second best estate planning lawyer in New York out of over 800 attorneys. You can read some of what she's contributed. She's been featured in Forbes as a contributor for Entrepreneur magazine and has spoken at UN headquarters. So she's not just your run-of-the-mill person who advises people. She's actually doing the work, has the experience, and we hope everyone gets a lot out of this. Think up your questions, because this is the time to get your questions answered for free. Take it away, Laura. We can't wait to hear from you.
Super. Thank you so much for that introduction, Gail. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can all see my presentation here. Okay, so I've hit share. Can everyone see this? Gail, can you just confirm that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so welcome to Lift Your Business, how to create a solid legal, insurance, financial, and tax foundation for your 5, 6, or 7-figure business. Again, I'm Laura Cowan, and I'm so glad that you are with me today. You're going to learn a ton. This is going to be a great use of your time. So this is our agenda. First, we're going to talk about why Lift. Why is it so important to have a solid foundation in place for your business? And we'll talk about the 4 cornerstones of proper business building, which are legal, insurance, financial, and tax. And in specific, how you could be sabotaging your business by not having good legal, insurance, financial, and tax systems in place. And then there's also a bonus for each of you at the end that I want to make sure you don't miss out on. So be sure to stick around for that. I think this will probably go about maybe 25 minutes, and we'll have lots of time for questions at the end if you have any. So who is this for? This web class is for basically 2 groups of people. First of all, anyone who's starting a business, who doesn't know how to start a business and build that business on a solid foundation. Or maybe you've been in business for a while, but you haven't done any of the things that you're supposed to do to build your business on a solid foundation, and you're worried that it's going to come crumbling down at any minute. So that means coaches, consultants, maybe you're an online course creator, speakers, thought leaders, authors, anyone who's a small business owner, anyone who's an entrepreneur. If that's you, then you're definitely in the right place. And I want you to think for a minute about why you're in business to begin with. Why did you take this big risk and put it all on the line to follow your passion and start your own business? These are some of the reasons that I see people go into business when they come into my office. Maybe it's just because you just, for the financial benefits, wanting to make a good living with your business is a really common reason that people start a business. And if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right and in a way that's going to afford the lifestyle that you want. I always say the more money you're making, the more people you're helping. So making money with your business is a good thing. Or maybe you're in business because you have a big message that you want to get out to the world. and you want to make an impact on the people that you're serving. Or maybe it's because you want to leave a legacy and you know that you're never going to be able to do that at your 9 to 5. This is one of the most common reasons that I see business owners coming in and starting a business is they recognize that they're never really going to be able to make the mark that they want to make on the world just working in their 9 to 5. So which one are you? Maybe you're all three. I know that I'm a little bit of all three. I became a lawyer to make a difference in the lives of families and entrepreneurs. And I started my own law firm instead of working for someone else because I knew that the best way to have that impact and to leave the legacy that I wanted to leave behind was going to be by being my own business owner instead of working for someone else. So I had everything I needed to start a business. I had the dream, the motivation, the credentials, but like many entrepreneurs, I forgot about the foundation, which is what we're here to talk about today. So a little bit about me. As Gail said, my name is Laura Cowan. I'm the founder of the law office of Laura Cowan, and we're based in New York City. And I'm an attorney, I'm a former CPA, and I'm also a small business coach. And this is all of my contact information, and feel free to reach out. We work with families and business owners nationwide. And a little bit about where it all began for me. So I started my career as an accountant, and I have a degree in accounting. I passed the CPA exam, and I worked for a bunch of different companies like Ernst & Young, Goldman Sachs here in New York City, and a couple of hedge funds as well. Then I decided to make a change, and I went to law school. And I went to the University of Minnesota Law School, which is a top 20 school. And my goal at that time was to work with families and business owners. I knew that was the kind of law that I wanted to practice when I got out. I was very entrepreneurial, so I worked at a law firm for a little bit after graduating, but then I went ahead and started my own firm, not knowing anything about how to start a practice or to have my own business, which in retrospect seems a little bit crazy, but I did that. And the reason it seems crazy is because I learned about the law in law school, but I didn't learn anything about how to actually start a business. And they don't teach you that in law school. They don't teach you how to do anything really other than practice law. So it was a pretty big endeavor starting my own law practice in December of 2016 with no network. I had no clients that I brought with me from another firm. I had zero safety net. In retrospect, seems a little bit crazy, but I'm glad that I did it because here we are 4 years later. I've got a 7-figure law practice. I've got some of these awards that Gail has already mentioned. I've been featured in Forbes. I've spoken at the UN, and I've got a coaching business in addition to my law practice. But I also made some pretty big mistakes. And the good news is you're going to learn from those mistakes, because I also struggled with learning how to set up the right legal entity and how to maintain that entity and use it properly so it does what it was supposed to do, which is protect my personal assets. I had to get agreements in place, client services agreements, to make sure I got paid on time and all of my bases were covered. I had to get the right insurance in place. I had to figure out how to understand the numbers of my law practice, which is something that you'd think would be pretty easy as a CPA, but I had to learn all of that as well as it all applied to my own business. My taxes, I wasn't taking advantage of all the deductions that I should have been taking advantage of. So I had to learn all of this despite already being an attorney and a CPA. And I made some pretty big mistakes along the way. The good news is that you don't have to go to law school and pass the bar exam and make all the same mistakes that I did, because I'm going to share everything that I've learned with you for free. So a mistake that I made when I first started my business was I ignored the foundation of the business. And it's very likely that you have also ignored some of the aspects of the foundation of your business as well. We're just simply not taught, even in law school, about what it really takes for a small service-based business to have the right foundation. In fact, a lot of people will tell you that a foundation isn't even necessary. And that's the first tip I'm going to give you today. And that's to not let anyone convince you that you don't need to worry about this stuff until you're bigger, that you don't need to worry about the legal things or getting the right insurance in place and the right tax structure. The truth is, if you're in business, and it can be any kind of business, even if you're just getting started, you are at risk. For example, I once knew a CPA who would tell business owners that they didn't need to set up a legal entity for their business because they weren't making enough money yet. And this is a mistake for a few reasons. First of all, your business can get into legal trouble at any time, whether it's making money or not. All it takes is one unhappy client, one disagreement, one rule or law broken that you didn't even know existed, and before you know it, you've got an expensive legal mess. And if you do set up, or if you do get into some kind of legal trouble and you haven't set up a legal entity protecting your personal assets from the actions of your business, then you could lose your car, your home, or your savings without the right legal entity in place. So that's one reason why you want to get a foundation in place, even if you're not making a lot of money. And then the second thing is that your business may not be making a lot of money now, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay like that. The goal is to grow, and it's going to be a lot easier and more efficient and effective to grow when you've got the right foundation in place. So the truth is, you need a solid foundation if you want to grow in a way that makes sense, doesn't take over your life, and doesn't collapse in on itself as you're growing. So these are some of the holes that you might have in the foundation of your business. Maybe you're paying too much in taxes, or you suspect that you are, but you don't really know because you're not keeping good records, or you're doing your taxes yourself, which is something I don't recommend. Or maybe you're not documenting your agreements in writing. You just confirm things and then cross your fingers and hope that nothing goes wrong. Maybe you're not able to engage clients on a consistent basis. This could be a big hole in the foundation of your business. Having a solid foundation tells the world that you're serious about your business, and you're sending that message that you're legit. Being constantly on edge financially is a really big red flag that you don't have your financial foundation in place, because you don't understand your numbers and you're not making good decisions based on your numbers. Or maybe you've got dramas or relationship conflicts that are draining your energy because you don't have good documents in place. Or maybe you want to share your ideas, but you're scared to because you worry that they might get stolen. So you're not protecting your intellectual property. You're not sharing your great ideas with the world, and that's really limiting you. If you want your legacy to continue after you're gone, but things aren't set up properly, then you're not going to be leaving the legacy behind, which might be one of the reasons that you started a business to begin with. Maybe you're dealing with conflicts over things like refunds, and you're getting into legal threats with clients over that. Or maybe you just don't have the right insurance for your business. So it might come as a surprise to you, but these foundations are often missing in almost every business, even the big ones that look like they've got it made from the outside. You can have the outward appearance of having a solid business, but in reality, your foundation could be crumbling. So the higher purpose of LIFT, which is the legal, insurance, financial, and tax, it's not about dotting your I's and crossing your T's. And it's not about pushing you into making fear-based decisions in your business. It's really about you showing up for your business and impacting the world. It's about being a conscious business owner and really taking care of your business. So a quick disclaimer, just a little reminder that I'm not your lawyer today, that this information is merely a guide. It's not any kind of legal advice. I always recommend consulting with a lawyer or a CPA about your specific circumstances. And then second of all, each of these topics is huge and could be easily its own webinar. I could devote an entire weekend to any single one of them. But But stick with me and I'll do what I can, and I promise to show you exactly how to take it a step further and get everything that you need going forward. So let's start with legal. This is the L in lift. How are you sabotaging your business by not having a solid legal foundation in place? And when people think of legal and they think of the legal parts of having a business, they tend to think of it as being very one-dimensional, like you set up an LLC or you file for a trademark and then you're done with that and you move on. But that's really such a small part of it. The legal parts of your business are what supports your creativity. They protect and strengthen and enhance your relationships, which is what ultimately allows you to grow your business. So when you have legal uncertainties in your business, first of all, prospects and vendors and clients may not take you seriously. It's hard to take a business seriously when you don't have any agreements in place, or you haven't set up a business entity, or you're doing your own bookkeeping and taxes. Maybe you find yourself in little mini conflicts or mini dramas with clients and employees and team members because you haven't been clear about what the agreement is and you haven't gotten anything in writing. So when there is a disagreement, the only way to manage it is to hire attorneys, and that's going to be expensive. So what legal is really about is protecting your personal assets, expanding your relationships, and growing your business so that it flourishes. And it's about taking your business seriously and having clarity with yourself and with others. So let's parse out the legal side. I break this up into 3 categories, which falls under ICE. An easy way to remember it is intellectual property, contracts, and entity. So protecting your work and your family, this falls under the intellectual property. And protecting your relationships, that's all about having contracts in place. And protecting your personal assets, that's all about having the right legal or business entity. So intellectual property, this is about protecting your ideas or your work. How do you as a thought leader protect your ideas? So this is intellectual property. I'm talking about trademarks, copyrights, things like that. You might think that you don't have any intellectual property, but if all you have is a website, you've got intellectual property. The content and the ideas and your logo and everything on your website is IP, and you want to protect it and make sure that no one else is using it without your permission. A little bit about my philosophy about ideas. My philosophy is that you have to share your ideas to grow them. The biggest danger to protecting your idea is that you overprotect it and you smother it and it dies because you haven't put it into motion because you're afraid that someone else is going to steal it. So how do you protect your ideas? First of all, when you're talking about your ideas with anyone, make sure that they have a non-disclosure, have them sign a non-disclosure agreement. And if we work together, I'll help you get one of those in place. You want to make sure that any work that's being done for you by an independent contractor, that you've got this work for hire clause in your contract. So in other words, if you hire an independent contractor to develop a logo for you or create a website, you want to make sure that they, first of all, they sign a contract, and second of all, that you make it clear that you own that property when the logo has been developed or the website has been developed. This is called a work for hire clause. And it just transfers ownership of that intellectual property to you. So if you have a name, a tagline, a logo, you want to trademark that. I would recommend working with an attorney to get those things trademarked. It's not a good use of your time trying to figure out how to do it yourself, but an attorney can do that for you on a flat fee basis. And then the other thing that you want to remember is that protecting your intellectual property, it's about protecting your work, but it's also about protecting your family, which I know is not what people think about when they think of intellectual property, but your intellectual property can live on forever, and that's part of your legacy. And so this is where protecting your legacy comes in. You want your work and the things that you've created and all that great work that you've done to be protected so that it can live long after you have lived. So agreements, this is the C in ICE, it stands for contracts. These are all about protecting your relationships. And there's all kinds of legal documents that fall into the contracts category that you should absolutely have in place. Three of the big ones are a client services agreement, a website, legal notice, and an independent contractor agreement. So if you're a coach or a consultant or a thought leader, or any kind of entrepreneur offering services, having a client services agreement is necessary. A solid services agreement it's going to protect you when something goes wrong, when there's any kind of miscommunication or misunderstanding. If you haven't gotten it down in writing, the only way to resolve that issue is to hire attorneys, and that's going to be expensive and time consuming. So I spend a lot of time drafting client services agreements for my clients and really making them very thorough and in depth, and making sure that they protect my client under every single circumstance. And you also want to remember that you can get templates online. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that. I often see people making mistakes where they draft their own client services agreement, and they include clauses in it that are actually that you're not allowed to have. They're actually illegal. I had a client once who had a non-disparagement clause in her own DIY client services agreements, basically saying you can work with me, but you're not allowed to leave me a bad review online. Well, that actually violates a federal law that's been in existence since 2016. You're not allowed to say you can't leave me a bad review online. So it's just a reminder that there's templates out there for this kind of thing, but you really want to work with an attorney because you can get yourself into trouble without even knowing it. So website legal notices, if you have a website, and almost everybody does, there are certain legal notices that should go on your website. And I won't go into details of what those are today, but one of them is called a privacy policy, and it's actually required by law. So if you have a website and you're collecting any kind of personal information from people, like names and emails, you need to have a privacy policy posted telling people what information you collect and what you do with it. And again, it's required by law, so that's something that a lot of people are unaware of. And then there's the terms and conditions that you would want to have, a disclaimer which protects you in the event that someone sues you. So those are another one of the group of contracts that you want to have. And then finally, any kind of an independent contractor that you have working for you, you should always get that in writing as well. This is an agreement for when you hire someone to do work for you, to spell out the terms of that arrangement and get everything in writing. So this could be someone who you hire to design a logo for you, or maybe your virtual assistant. You should always get that agreement documented in writing. So like I said, some of these agreements you can do on your own, but I do recommend working with an attorney to at least review it, because they're going to think of things that you never would have thought of. They're going to make sure that you've got things in there that are supposed to be there, and you don't have things that aren't supposed to be there. And then the thing to remember here is that contracts, AKA agreements, these are all about protecting your relationships. It's about avoiding conflict, making sure that that your business is running the way that you want it to be running without having to get legal lawyers involved. So the E in ICE, it stands for entity, and this is for a business entity or a legal entity. So I'm talking about a corporation or an LLC, a partnership. These are the kinds of legal entities that people set up. Again, don't make the mistake of thinking that you don't need to set up a legal entity for your business simply because you're just getting started or because you're not making a lot of money. I won't go into depth today about all the different options you have and how to choose the right entity for your business. But just keep in mind, the purpose of setting up a legal entity, like an LLC, for example, is to protect your personal assets. So if your business gets sued, you don't have to dig into your savings or your 401k or sell your car to pay that debt. So again, even if you're just getting started, it only takes one unhappy client to sue you, and then before you know it, you're in trouble. So Another tip is that even if you've set up your legal entity like your LLC, you have to make sure that you're managing it properly. It's not enough just to sign the paperwork and then set it aside. For example, when you have an LLC, you want to get an EIN for that LLC, which is its own separate tax number. And the IRS can give you your EIN, and then you want to use that EIN when you're setting up your bank account, not your own social security number. If you don't take those extra steps, then your LLC is not going to do anything for you. So those are the things that you want to think about. These are the three common business entities that people use. By far, the LLC is the most common, but you could also be set up as a partnership or a corporation. And if we work together, then this is the sort of thing that we'll talk about, which one is right for you, and how to get all of the paperwork in place to make sure that you're running your entity the way it's supposed to be. So again, the legal side of things is about protecting your intellectual property, getting contracts in place, and setting up and managing your business entity the right way. Now we're back to lift. We're back to the I in lift, which is for insurance. How are you potentially sabotaging your business by not having the right insurance in place? And this is what happens when we have uncertainty about what insurance we need. We don't play full out because we're always thinking in the back of our heads, am I doing something wrong? Is this going to cost something if I get in trouble? What if I get sued? You don't have those fears when you know that you've got the right insurance in place. So you don't take action on your ideas because you don't feel confident in the foundation of your business. So really, insurance is about protecting the things that you care about, your family, your business, the people around you, your clients, your ideas. That's why we have insurance. And the key here is knowing what kind of insurance you need for your specific situation, depending on your life and your business, before you speak to an insurance agent, so you know the kinds of questions to ask. These are some of the kinds of insurance that you might be looking at: personal, business, and life. Under the personal category, the one I'm really going to hit on is disability insurance. This is insurance that pays out if you're disabled and unable to work. So as a business owner, your ability to work is your greatest asset. That's the most important thing that you have, is your ability to go and earn a living. You want to have a way to replace that income if you're unable to work for some reason due to disability. Without it, how would you support yourself and your family if you were unable to work? So disability insurance is a big one if you're a small business owner that I would recommend looking into. You also want to look at business insurance. And I think it's interesting that a lot of business owners, they don't even realize that there's such a thing as business insurance. But I want to tell you what it is and why you might need it. So you might want to consider getting professional liability insurance or malpractice insurance, and then also general business insurance. And one of the things that this kind of insurance will do is, even if you haven't done anything wrong, if someone sues you, you're going to hire an attorney. And insurance can help pay for the cost of your attorney. So I think that's a really important thing to have, because again, even if you haven't done anything wrong, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to deal with a legal matter. And so having insurance that will pay for your legal fees if you get sued, I think goes a long way towards having peace of mind. Another quick thing about business insurance: once you start hiring employees for your business, you definitely want to work with a small business attorney, because this is a huge area of liability for you. A huge proportion of lawsuits involving small business owners are related to employment issues. And there are a ton of state and local and federal employment laws that you have to follow. So just a heads up on that. And there's insurance that goes along with having employees. For example, you have to have workers' comp insurance if you start hiring employees. So that's something to think about. And then again, I recommend speaking to someone about life insurance, because if your business is supporting your family, or what happens if you pass away? Who's going to support your family after that? This is where life insurance comes in. So F is for financial systems. How are you potentially sabotaging your business by not having the right financial systems in place? And this is what happens when we don't have financial security. You can't make good business decisions if you don't understand your numbers. you're likely playing too small because you don't have a good sense for how your business is actually doing. And this just means that you're operating with fear because you don't really know how much money your business is making, how much cash you have on hand. At the end of the day, it's your business that suffers, and it's your ability to be successful that suffers. So I want to give you 3 tips right now that you should keep in mind when it comes to the financial side of running a business. First, you need to have a bookkeeper and not be doing your own books. I would outsource this immediately. There's just not a good use of your time. You should be focusing your time on things that generate revenue. So your bookkeeper, you want to make sure you find someone who really understands your business, your revenue streams, what cycles your income comes in, what your expenses are. And guess what you should have when you have a bookkeeper? You should have an agreement. You should have a contract. Especially make sure that it's got a confidentiality clause in there, that your bookkeeper is not going to say anything. They're going to know a lot about your life and your business, and you want to make sure that they've got a non-disclosure agreement that's been signed. Also, you want to be looking at 4 reports on a monthly basis, and this is something that your bookkeeper will prepare for you. A balance sheet, a profit and loss or an income statement, an accounts receivable, and your cash flow. We help our clients understand these 4 reports because you can't really be a legitimate business owner if you don't know how to read these basic financial reports. And then finally, you want to be creating a profitable business model. And that means more than one revenue stream, maybe recurring revenue that comes on a monthly basis, maybe a membership site. These are some of the things that I help business owners with in my coaching business, helping you understand your business model and the numbers so you can really be making good decisions. And then finally, the T in lift is for tax. How are you sabotaging your business by not having your taxes planned for? So what this means is you could be paying more in taxes than you need to be because you're not planning properly. And this means less for your family. It means less for your legacy. It means less for getting your message out. You'll be living on less and not having as much to invest in your business. And then again, operating in fear because you're not documenting things properly and you're not sure if you're getting the right deductions and you're not sure if you're doing everything you're supposed to be. So this is really going to hurt your business if, especially if you're in the middle of a growth spurt. You want to have certainty with taxes in your business. So I'm not a financial advisor or a tax accountant. I am a CPA, but I don't practice in taxes anymore. But a great tip for you is to put aside 20 to 30% of every dollar that you bring in for taxes. Just right off the bat, put it in a separate bank account, a tax reserve account. And then when tax day comes, you're not going to be scrambling because you will have already set that money aside. I also recommend having a CPA for starters, which might be different from your bookkeeper. It might be the same person, but it might not. And don't do your taxes yourself. Have a CPA do it because they're going to get every single deduction and look at your business as a whole and save you money at the end of the day. And you want to meet with them at least twice a year. Don't just meet with them a week before taxes are due. That's the worst time to strategize. Meet with them a couple of times a year to make sure that you're planning and that you're making decisions and that you're following through and that you're strategizing. And then finally, make sure that you're documenting everything that you do so you can maximize those deductions and ultimately pay less in taxes. So really what all this is about holding yourself out with confidence. You've got to make this investment in your business before anyone else is going to be willing to invest in you. Lift is about self-care for your business and showing the world that you're legitimate. It's about getting client agreements in place so you can engage clients with confidence and raising your fees because people know that you're taking your business seriously, and leveraging your time with groups and masterminds or licensing models and getting off of the cash flow roller coaster and off of the trading your time for dollars model. And you want to be able to make decisions more easily. You don't want to worry about what you don't know. You want to be building your business on a solid foundation, not just on blind faith. And it's about feeling confidence in your own decision making so you can move forward, even with your fears. And then finally, it's about asking the right questions before you hire expensive advisors. Your business should have, even if you're just starting out, a lawyer, a CPA, a bookkeeper. You're going to be choosing a bank and a banker. You're going to be buying insurance. It seems like these things are expensive and they're things that you think you may not need, but your business is going to grow and you want it to grow on a solid foundation. It's about legally documenting your agreements. So you're saving money on lawyer fees because you're not having these little conflicts and uncertainty and having to deal with ugly business breakups. And ultimately, Lyft is about being taken seriously by your prospects, your clients, your family. If you don't take your business seriously, no one else is going to. But as soon as you start, your business is going to skyrocket. So this is what we do, and we're almost done. I'm going to hop into the questions here in a minute. But we work with business owners nationwide to establish their business, protect their name, and keep their profits. And so we can help with all of these things. We can help you set up an LLC or another business entity. We can help you get around those complicated employment laws so you're hiring and firing without fear, protecting and maximizing your intellectual property, getting the right type of insurance and the right amount, and saving money on taxes. We help with creating win-win agreements, client contracts, and other kinds of contracts that work for both sides. Saving money on lawyer fees. We help people save time that's lost to Google searches and trying to figure things out yourself online. We help you avoid painful business breakups and making sure that you ask the right questions before hiring advisors. So that's the end of the informational part of the webinar. And I just want to give you a quick gift as a thank you for attending today. And that is your own personal Lyft audit, which we normally charge $4.50 for, but we're waiving that fee for all attendees of the BizSugar webinar. So your personal Lyft audit, what is this? This is a Zoom with me, a 45-minute Zoom with me, unless you live in New York, and then we can meet in person. And basically, this is going to be a review of your business's legal, insurance, financial, and tax systems. And we're going to be looking for the holes in your foundation, because every business has holes, and how we can potentially help you fill those holes. We'll talk about if we're a good fit to work together, and we'll go over our flat fee packages and next steps if we decide that we're a good fit to work together. So everything that we do is at a flat fee, and it's going to be based on the level of foundation building you and your business needs to do. So the Lyft audit is for anyone who lives in the US. You don't have to live in New York. And it works for new business owners or established business owners. So even if you haven't started your business, this is a great time to come in, because we'll go over all the things that you should be doing to get started. And if you're established, most likely you haven't done all the things that you should have done. So we'll talk about the things that you can get in place, even if you've been in business for a while. This is for any kind of a business owner, coach, consultant, online course creator, entrepreneur. And I recommend booking the Lyft audit. Even if we decide not to work together, you're going to leave more clear than ever about what you really need and what you don't need to lay a proper Lyft foundation for your business. So this is where you can go to book your Lyft session online, and be sure when you book your session to mention BizSugar, and that'll make sure that you get that $450 fee waived. You can go to calendly.com/estate-plan/45, and that will bring up my my personal calendar, and you can just book a time online that works for you. And again, make sure that you mention BizSugar in the comments, because that will make sure that you get that $450 fee waived. So you can either take a screenshot of this, or I think we'll be sending out an email at the end of all of this with a link to my calendar. And that is the end of my presentation.
All right, so that was very interesting, and the Q&A light just lit up. And yeah, that sounds like I wrote it. Who wrote it? So Charles said, that was great. I really wanted not to hear this, but I know you're right. That said, I was thinking that I didn't want to have a private forum and instead to have it on Facebook. I'm worried about the interactions between members and if a member causes problems for another member. I'm guessing that insurance could mitigate that exposure.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's one of the reasons that I'm like a huge fan of insurance, because there's different ways that you can protect yourself, and that's kind of where the ice comes in. If you know, having a contract in place is one way to get protection, having insurance is another layer. So yeah, Charles, I would recommend speaking to an insurance agent. I can actually give you the name of someone really great who will help you look at what kind of exposure you have by running a Facebook group, and how to mitigate that exposure. Because like I said earlier in my presentation, if you get sued, even if you haven't done anything wrong, you're going to have to hire a lawyer, and that's going to be expensive. And if that's an out-of-pocket expense, then that's just going to be that could be more than you can handle. So one of the things that's great about insurance is that oftentimes it covers your legal fees. So yes, I would recommend speaking to an insurance agent about that specific issue. And if you work with an agent who is familiar with working with small business owners, then they're going to be aware of this kind of issue. You know, they're going to be aware of what kind of questions the insurers are going to ask, and that kind of a thing. So they're going to have some good answers for you in terms of how to minimize your risk. I'm a big fan of insurance.
So that kind of surprises me. You think that have you ever seen a lawsuit where someone sued the person who started a Facebook group over something that happened within that group?
I have not, but I haven't actually researched the issue either. So I can't speak. Oh, thank you, Charles. Yeah. So I'd have to do a little bit of legal research to see if that's actually happened. It's hard for me to answer that, but
well, anybody can sue anyone for anything at any time, so you never know. All right, so he said he did talk to a State Farm guy, and this doesn't surprise me. They didn't have any idea. Earlier in the internet life, there was actually attorneys who were internet attorneys, because if you went to a regular attorney, they would just say, I don't know what you're talking about, and they couldn't help you at all. I would love to have you please have your insurance guy who does know something about these kinds of things, please have him contact me so that we can get him into our advisors directory, because I'm sure an insurance agent who has a clue is probably very rare. The typical insurance agent, just does auto insurance or whatever, and they really have no idea. Charles, did you see that she added her calendar link into the Q&A chat? And so anyone that's on the chat right now that's listening to this, if you go into the Q&A tab, you can see the calendar invite. So you can go into her calendar and book a time to talk to her about your personal situation. It doesn't cost anything. You might as well do it. And as Charles said, we hate to know about this, but we may need to know about this. And
yeah, I'm wondering what exactly Charles wanted not to hear, that he needs to get his
all of it. Like we briefly chatted yesterday, and I expressed the idea that the average freelancer, which I'm most familiar with because I work with all kinds of freelancers, the average freelancer doesn't have any of this. They're not an LLC. They don't have insurance. They may or may not use contracts, because it's kind of one of those things. The people most likely to rip you off are the people that have contracts and lawyers and things like that. Like for my own person, we turned down working with a group of millionaires because we just didn't want the legal liability. That the odds are that somebody very wealthy who has a lawyer on retainer is more likely to sue you than if you only interact with other small businesses who are as broke as you are. And so, the average little person doesn't go around suing someone. They wouldn't even occur to them to sue someone unless they were really grievously harmed intentionally. So it's a whole different life. And that's why I could see him saying that I didn't want to hear this because.
Yeah, I mean, and the idea is not to scare people or to make you think that you're a heartbeat away from getting sued, and that is not my intention with this webinar at all. It's really just to let people be aware of all of the different things that you should be doing. Most people are completely unaware that if you have a website, that there are legal notices that you should post, not just to protect the privacy of people who are visiting your site, but to protect you. So that's a good thing. You want to have these legal notices on your site because then, for example, a disclaimer on your site that says, I'm not responsible for if you take the advice on my site and you go and you use it and you end up hurt in some way or harmed in some way, that you're not, as a business owner, responsible for that. That's a good thing. You want that. Maybe you've got a lawyer, you have to pay a lawyer to help you draft it, but these are not, and this is why I mentioned this earlier in my presentation, that the point of doing these things is not just to check a box and to say, okay, I've done this and I've done that. There's actually all of the things I've spoken about today are meant to protect you and your business, and to put you in a position where you're not going to lose everything because of a mistake or a law you didn't even know existed, or an expensive lawsuit. So you want to have these protections in place. They're going to be less expensive than dealing with a problem down the road. And if you work with a good business attorney, one of the things that we'll do, Charles, in our Lift audit is we talk about what things you need to focus on today and what things can wait, because not everything is a 10-alarm fire. And I think this is one of the things that my clients really value when we go through. We start out and I'll look and I'll say, this is something that is a very high area of risk for you. And it's usually not even the thing that they came into my office to talk about. But I'll point out, this is a pretty risky thing. You've got employees, but none of them have signed agreements, or you don't have the workers' comp that you should have. So let's focus on that now. And this is the flat fee to get that fixed. And then in a couple of months, then we'll start to work on these other things that aren't as urgent, that they're not as risky, you're not as exposed, but you should get done anyway. And then we'll do that in a few months as your budget allows. So, that's something like LegalZoom is not going to help you with that. And I think it's one of the greatest values that working with an attorney has, is they're going to sit down and they're going to help you prioritize. You should really focus on this first, and that's worth spending some money on. But, maybe this other thing can wait a few months down the road because it's not as big of a fire.
I think there is some awareness among serious web owners about the legal pages, that you're supposed to have the privacy policy, that kind of thing. And I think most people probably know if you have employees, you have to have workman's comp, at least in some states. Those vary greatly by state. But, some of the other stuff is a little overwhelming to people. But they need to know, what's possible, what they could have, what they can work towards. We do have another question. Haley asks, do you recommend separating your business and personal insurance policies? And I don't know if she means like have separate insurance agencies entirely, or just separate policies within the same agent.
Oh, yeah. I guess I'll answer this. Different agents specialize in different things, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to give you the agent that I work with on business insurance. He does business insurance, but if I needed a life insurance policy, I would go to someone who specializes in life insurance. If I needed a car, I don't even have a car because I live in New York, but if I needed car insurance, I'd probably go to someone different. I don't know if that answers your question, Haley. I wouldn't necessarily want to work with one agent that kind of does everything. It's kind of like working with a lawyer that does everything, because it means they're not really good at any of it. So I would go to an agent who's really focused on business insurance to get business insurance. And if you're thinking about life insurance, you'll probably need to find another insurance agent. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I think a lot of insurance agents try to push it's cheaper if you buy all your insurance from us, kind of plans. But
Yeah,
I don't know that business insurance is ever included in any of those. It's
yeah,
like our house and life,
And I'm a big fan of bundling. I mean, it's just like the commercials, with my business insurance, like I think I've bundled my malpractice insurance, and then along with it, I've got a really cheap like cyber insurance policy that protects me if I ever get hacked. So there's definitely something to be said for bundling, but I don't think anyone's really going to bundle your life insurance with your business's cyber insurance. That's not going to happen.
Okay, great. So I have a question.
That was helpful.
Oh, thank you. So if you had a business and you weren't sure what would happen to your business, let's say that you have a business and you died or became incapacitated. I'm sure it varies by state, but generally, do you have a way of helping people figure out what happens with that business? Like, does their family automatically inherit it, or do they lose it somehow? What happens?
Yeah, so that is a great question, and that actually segues into the other kind of law that I practice, which is estate planning. And estate planning means wills and trusts and things like that. If you have a business, you want to have an estate or a succession plan in place, because it is dependent on where you live. But if you haven't gotten down in writing, if I die, this is what I want to happen to my business, this is who I want to be in charge, then it might end up in the hands of people that you would never want managing your business. For example, your spouse. If you pass away and everything goes to your spouse, but what about your business partners? Do you really want your spouse being able to make business decisions about a business that they weren't in part of running when you were alive? So estate planning is really important especially for business owners, because you just want to have a plan in place for what's going to happen to my business in the event I'm either disabled and I can't work, or I'm actually deceased. And that's something that we work with business owners on as well, because you want to get that in writing, and you should just have an estate plan anyway. You should have a healthcare proxy and a financial power of attorney, and all of the documents that you need to have in the event that you're incapacitated or pass away. Because if you don't have those documents in place, then state law will kick in. And there's state laws in every state that talk about, well, this is what happens to someone's money if they die without a will. This is what happens to their minor children. And that's just going to be the default. So I always say that estate planning or succession planning, it's about opting out of the default for your family and your assets and your business, which you probably wouldn't like to begin with.
So this is a tough question from Charles. Said, if you had to prioritize, which would you do first, life insurance or disability insurance?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I would have to know more about your circumstances. Life insurance is if you have people who are depending on you. For example, like I don't have life insurance because I don't have any children. So if I passed away, no one is dependent upon me. But I do have disability insurance, because that's, my ability to work is the most important thing. If I had to pick one or the other, I would need to know more about your financial circumstances and your goals, and more about your family and things like that to really answer that. Okay. I'm not an insurance agent, so
yeah, I think if you were single, then disability, and if you were, but honestly, I think I'd do disability first, no matter what. If you could only really afford one or the other, you'd have to go with disability, because that would cover everybody if you couldn't work. Whereas life, if you don't have life
Yeah.
insurance and you die, your dependents are on their own. They'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, single or don't have children. If you don't have anyone who's depending on you, then life insurance isn't. Again, I'm not an insurance specialist, so I don't want to say that life insurance isn't necessary, but it is specific on your circumstances. But I agree with you. Disability insurance is. I happily write that check every month because it would just be a catastrophe as it would for most people if you were unable to work.
So Charleston thinks it's enough to know it's not a straightforward answer. See you at the audit.
Super.
All right. So as usual, I want to let everybody know that the replay of this video will be put into the blog post. And you can reach all of the replays by going to blog.bizsugar.com/webinars. And there's a tab at the top. You can just click on that. You're all invited, of course, to join the mastermind community if you like. I'm going to try to get Laura to give me a few little tidbits to put in there for everyone so that, more people become aware of this. As businesses kind of up in the air right now, people are changing, pivoting, trying to figure out what to do next, given the situation in the world. We can all use some good legal advice. And I really appreciate Laura being with us and giving us all this good information, and especially offering free consultations. That's actually a first, and probably a good thing. We ought to try to do that more often. All right, so Laura, in that blog post, it does tell you how to reach Laura, and she did have it on the screen, and I will make sure that everybody knows how to get in touch with her in case you missed the link that was put into the Q&A. So that does it for today. We invite you to come to all of our future webinars. Again, they're on the second and the fourth Wednesdays of every month, except for the day before Thanksgiving. We decided we didn't know if anybody'd want to come. They might be traveling to visit family for Thanksgiving. So except for that day, that's when the webinars always are. We look forward to seeing you in the future and working with Laura too in the future.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.